Hello and welcome to another edition of WION Live Broadcast. I'm Nick Harper from Washington DC. Let's start with the top headlines of the day. Amidst high drama, Pakistan's parliament adjourns the debate on the no-confidence motion for Sunday, with the embattled Prime Minister set to address the nation shortly.
According to our intelligence, Russian units are not withdrawing, but repositioning. Russia is trying to regroup, resupply, and reinforce its offensive in the Donbas region. At the same time,
NATO Secretary-General says that Russian forces are not withdrawing, but repositioning, despite recent statements about scaling down their military operations around Kiev and in northern Ukraine. The OPEC group of oil-producing countries and its Russia-led allies agree on another modest oil output increase, ignoring Western pressure to significantly boost production as the Ukraine conflict rocks prices. Kenya's top court rules that President Uhuru Kenyatta's bid to change the constitution was illegal, dealing a blow to him and his allies ahead of key elections in August. FIFA President Gianni Infantino tries to distance himself from a controversial project to hold the World Cup every 2 years, as he suggests the plan had never actually been proposed by the world football's governing body. And tornadoes and heavy storms whipped through the southeast states of Alabama, Louisiana and Mississippi, destroying houses and damaging buildings. The President of the United States has promised to end the nightmare of Americans detained in Russia. This statement by the White House comes after Joe Biden met with the parents of Trevor Reed, a former US Marine who's imprisoned in Russia. The family of Trevor Reed has been holding a protest outside the White House to bring awareness to their son's case. The White House press secretary released a statement confirming that the meeting had taken place. And on the other side, the imprisoned US Marine has declared a hunger strike to protest over disciplinary action against him in Russia. This is the second time the former Marine has gone on hunger strike. Reed announced one back in November the 4th last year, which lasted for 2 weeks. There were reports of Reed being repeatedly placed in an isolation cell for allegedly breaking prison rules. Joe Biden had confirmed his plans to meet the Reed family in a recent COVID briefing.
Will you meet with Trevor Reed's parents, Mr. President, while they're here in Washington? They say that you promised them a meeting.
I'm going to see if I can get to see them. They're
Today?
good. They're good people. I haven't. We're trying to work that out. Thank you.
The American citizen Trevor Reed is serving a 9-year prison sentence in a penal colony some 500 kilometres southeast of Moscow. A Russian court had sentenced the former Marine for assaulting police officers while he was drunk in 2019. His conviction followed a high-profile trial of another former US Marine, Paul Whelan, on espionage charges.
I had not been in the military, I don't think FSB would have ever questioned me. I don't think I would have been arrested. I'm asking for help now. I was hoping that this wasn't a political case. This was maybe just bad police. Maybe they wanted money. Maybe it was someone wanted some new stars. But it's clear to me now that this is a political case.
Just days after Russia invaded Ukraine, the US Secretary of State ensured that the diplomats were working to release Americans detained in Russia.
As you know, and we've talked about this for a long time, we've been seeking the release of Paul Whelan and Trevor Reed for some time, both of whom are unjustly detained. We have an embassy team that's working on the cases of other Americans who are detained in Russia. We're doing everything we can to see to it that their rights are upheld and respected.
The United States is considering a plan to release more oil from its own reserves in an attempt to add a large amount of oil to the global market. Sources say that America will release 1 million barrels of oil per day for about 180 days. Joe Biden could announce the plan to tap the reserves as soon as this week. More details in our next report.
The US is close to announcing another big release of oil from its emergency reserves. That's according to 4 Reuters sources. The move, expected on Thursday, will mark the third time President Joe Biden has tapped strategic oil reserves in the past 6 months. The price of crude has surged since Russia invaded Ukraine in late February and the West responded with sanctions. Russia is one of the world's top producers of oil, contributing about 10% to the global market. The International Energy Agency has said that sanctions on Russia and a reluctance to buy Russian oil could cut the country's output by 3 million barrels a day by April. That's about a third of what it produced last year, according to the IEA. The US and Britain have previously urged other oil-producing nations to boost their output. Higher energy costs are a political liability for Biden and his Democratic Party, as they seek to retain control of Congress in November elections. News of Biden's expected announcement sent oil prices diving on Thursday.
Well, after Germany sounded an alarm over a possible gas crunch in Europe, Russia has allowed Berlin to pay for Russian gas in euros or dollars. In a phone call between the leaders, Putin told German Chancellor Olaf Scholz that despite his plan for ruble payments, nothing would change for the European partners. Russian gas meets a third of Europe's annual energy needs. The world's top natural gas producer planned to require payments for its energy exports in rubles rather than the usual euros or dollars from April the 1st. This is because of the Western financial sanctions over Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The payment method was needed because the Russian central bank's currency reserves have been frozen by the EU. Following Russia's demands, Germany raised the alert level under its emergency gas plan. Austria announced that it was following suit. Germany called the demand to pay in rubles unacceptable and called on energy companies not to comply with Putin's demand. The demand was rejected by the group of 7 nations. Western countries said that payment in rubles would blunt the impact of Western curbs and would instead bolster the Russian currency. And now, according to the German government, the Russian president has told Chancellor Olaf Scholz that Europe could continue paying for Russian gas in euros. Payments would be made in euros and then transferred to Gazprom Bank. The bank would convert the money into rubles. Gazprom Bank is one of the main channels for payments for Russian oil and gas. Today, the Russian government, its central bank and the energy giant Gazprom are expected to present Putin with a new gas payment system that will be conducted in rubles. Meanwhile, the European Commission is readying new sanctions against the Kremlin. According to a source-based report, the magnitude of the new measures will depend on Moscow's stance on gas payments in rubles. The new package of EU sanctions could be ready as early as next week. The possible EU reaction hinges on the timing, and details are set by Moscow for gas payments. Well, US President Joe Biden on Wednesday rolled up his sleeve and got his second COVID-19 booster jab. He said that the United States is at a new turning point in the pandemic, where COVID-19 no longer controls people's lives. President Biden got his booster shot, his fourth Pfizer vaccine, as his administration rolled out a new website for coronavirus information. President Biden also issued a renewed call for COVID funding from Congress.
Security guarantees to Ukraine as part of peace talks.
Great.
Is the U.S. willing to provide security guarantees to Ukraine as part of peace talks?
Somebody asked about the vaccines. Which Wonderful.
Mr. President, what did you hear from President Zelensky today about negotiations with Russia?
I've always thought that we have enough supply to give booster shots to those newly eligible individuals. But if Congress fails to act, we won't have the supply we need this fall to ensure the shots are available free, easily accessible for all Americans. Even worse, if we need a different vaccine for the future to combat a new variant, we're not going to have enough money to purchase it. We cannot allow that to happen. Congress, we need to secure additional supply now. We can't wait until we find ourselves in the midst of another surge to act. It'll be too late. And we also need this funding to continue our efforts to vaccinate the world with commitments we made. It's critical to our ability to protect against new variants. There's no wall you can build high enough to keep out a virus. Congress needs to act now, please.
This comes after the United States on Tuesday authorized a second booster shot for Americans above the age of 50 years. Biden also appealed to Congress for billions of dollars in emergency relief COVID aid and warned that the country's progress against COVID-19 would be at severe risk if Congress failed to act. The White House needs Congress to approve the emergency aid, to purchase new vaccines and therapeutics, and to reimburse doctors who care for uninsured COVID-19 patients. President Biden's speech is part of the government's broader effort to shift the country from a pandemic crisis mode to what experts are calling the next normal, a new phase in which Americans will learn to live with the risk of COVID. New coronavirus cases have been falling across the United States, but a highly transmissible Omicron subvariant, known as BA2, is driving a surge in Europe. Next today, Facebook's parent company Meta has been hit with security concerns yet again after the social media giant gave user information to hackers who pretended to be law enforcement officials. According to the source in the company, imposters use falsified emergency data requests and were able to get details like physical addresses and phone numbers of users. The hackers who duped the companies are reportedly affiliated with cybercrime groups known as the Recursion Team. The group is also said to have a history of using fake legal requests to garner sensitive data. In a statement, Meta defended the firm's review system, saying the company uses advanced systems and processes to detect any infringements. Apple, too, has been hit with a similar scam. In a statement, Apple noted that its guidelines allowed the company to contact the law officer and seek confirmation if the emergency requests were legitimate. Usually, US law enforcement officials must submit an official court order to obtain access to a social media account or an associated cell phone number. But in urgent cases, authorities can make an emergency data request, which can bypass official scrutiny. The emergency request does not require law officials to supply any court-approved documents. Security experts feel the monopoly of tech giants over the database and the lack of a unitary national system could be the reason for the problems. Israel has vowed to take action to tackle violence in the region after a gunman went on a shooting rampage, killing 5 people in the town of Bnei Brak. The attack was the 3rd deadly attack in Israel in the span of a week, which raised the total death toll to 11 people across 3 cities. Defence Minister Benny Gantz said Israel will do whatever it takes to break the wave of terrorism, and that his country is prepared to recruit reservists to conduct any operational activities in the region.
הבוקר גם חתמתי על צווי מעצר מנהליים לתושבים ישראלים שחשודים בפח"ע והם לא יהיו אחרונים. ואם יהיה צורך בכך, נגייס באופן מיידי אלפי חיילי מילואים שיציפו את הרחובות ביחד עם השוטרים ויפעלו בכל מקום בו נדרשת פעילות מבצעית.
Police said that they'd arrested a Palestinian suspect and an 18-year-old Israeli citizen on suspicion of supporting the Islamic State group. Hundreds of mourners attended the funeral of the victims as tensions over potential flare-ups remain in the region. US President Joe Biden issued a statement after a call with Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett, promising support to the State of Israel. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas, who criticised the West for its double standards when it comes to Palestinians, issued a rare condemnation of the attack, saying the killing of Israelis and Palestinians would only lead to the worsening of the situation. Meanwhile, a huge rally was held in Gaza to mark 46 years of Land Day. Land Day marks the events of March the 30th back in 1976, when Israeli troops shot and killed 6 people who were protesting land confiscations. Well, moving on now to the world's first robotic beehive story. An Israeli-based startup company has claimed to have created robotic beehives. The company says that its agricultural technology has saved more than 160 million bees in the past year, and it aims at saving bees from climate change. The company has recently raised $80 million in a private funding, bringing the total funds to date to $120 million. And these are the company's future plans.
All we're doing is we're carrying out beekeeping just like a beekeeper would do in the field, except we're using robotic hands and computer vision and camera.
אנחנו באים להם תשתית, זה
Well, as today, the die-hard star Bruce Willis is retiring from his acting career. This after the star was diagnosed with aphasia, a disease that impacts cognitive abilities. Here's the full story.
Actor Bruce Willis, best known as the star of the Die Hard film franchise, will retire from acting after being diagnosed with aphasia, his family said in a statement on Wednesday. Aphasia affects a person's ability to communicate through speech or writing. Willis's family said it was, quote, impacting his cognitive abilities. Willis, who is 67, achieved initial fame for the 1980s TV series Moonlighting before he became the tough guy action hero in 5 Die Hard films. He has appeared in about 100 films in all, winning acclaim for roles in Pulp Fiction and The Sixth Sense. And although he had been especially active in recent years, appearing in 8 movies released in 2021, they were not critically acclaimed. But fans never seem to abandon their adoration for the star. with many sharing sadness, shock, and tributes to Willis on social media as news of his diagnosis broke. The family statement, posted by his actress daughter Rumer Willis, said, quote, "This is a really challenging time for our family, and we are so appreciative of your continued love, compassion, and support." It is signed by his 5 children, his current wife, model Emma Hemming, and his former wife, actress Demi Moore, with whom he has remained close.
Well, finally today, in an effort to promote sustainable fashion and throw light on pertinent issues such as climate change, unsustainable fashion and the war in Ukraine, models in Taiwan have ditched their traditional runways at the Taipei Fashion Week for offbeat performances and unconventional runway shows. We leave you with this report. Thanks for watching.
The runway models staged a dance performance at the Taipei Fashion Week in upcycled clothes made from textiles collected over the years discarded by factories. These pieces of fabrics were meant to be thrown away. They were given a new lease of life by designers who wished to highlight the importance of changing unsustainable consumption patterns.
Since the beginning, we always kept the cut-down pieces from the factories, the so-called leftovers. We have kept these pieces for years because we have been making clothes for years. We have many bags of them. Then we thought of reusing these pieces after they had been deconstructed so that they'd become a new piece of usable fabric. Otherwise, they would have been wasted. This idea of deconstruction is that pieces of cloth are made into a new piece of fabric.
With growing issue of waste management being reported across the globe, the EU has proposed new rules that call for mandatory minimum use of recycled fibers by the year 2030. A shift from current popular fast fashion trends, the rules would also implement a ban on destruction and discarding unsold products and textiles. As per the European Commission, an average consumer tosses away almost 11 kilos of textiles a year. Fashion houses and governments are now trying to come up with ways to utilize these articles of clothing and put them to good use. That is not all. The Taipei Fashion Week also saw some unconventional runway installations. And then there were designers that wanted to send a message of peace and put on display their solidarity with the people of Ukraine.
From the day the war in Ukraine started, there were lots of refugees coming from the central station of Berlin, Germany. I saw that people were helpless about the situation. I saw lots of German people holding signs saying anyone can stay at my house, or I can help take care of 3 children, and so on. When we designed the backdrop, we put world peace and pray for Ukraine on it.
Bureau Report WION, World is One.
This is right, Arab.